be Edward. He actually could help.
What the f*** was that? Oh shit! No, run!
So we are talking about American Horror Story Season 6, Roanoke. Now, this is going to be a fairly complicated review to talk about, because this is a fairly complicated season about how this particular TV show plays out, and it has to have a lot of context in even before I even get into the plot synopsis. But I will just give you a very brief plot summary. It follows a young couple as they buy a farmhouse in the middle of rural America, where they are then menaced by loads of ghosts. Sounds quite simple, doesn't it? It is a simple premise, but the way this series is presented makes it a very unique experience. So there's 10 episodes. Now, there's a very clear delineation between the first half of the season and the second half. The first 5 episodes are basically presented to you as an audience like they're a kind of like a real account of these kind of like these spooky things happening. So what we have is actors playing the real survivors, essentially telling us their experiences in this house, and then we have other actors who are playing the original survivors in dramatic recreations, basically. So we have someone goes, oh, then this real bad thing happens, then we have this dramatic recreation of it, basically. So it kind of plays, and it's the way it's presented with the kind of the credits and the kind of the little preview at the beginning of each episode, very much like you would see these kind of like these real crime things where we have the the victims talk about what happened, and then the kind of dramatic recreation, but everyone's an actor. Anyway, so that's the first half of the season, and then the second half basically takes a very different style, and we basically have this almost like a found footage style last kind of 5 episodes, or last 4 episodes. The 5th one's more of an epilogue, and then it basically, the idea of that one is it's taking the real life survivors who are played by actors in our real life, of course, and then the actors who played the survivors, and then they all go back in the house together to try and have stuff happening. And it's basically like a Big Brother thing. There's all these different sort of cameras in the house and such like that. And the final episode is more of like an epilogue, very much like Game of Thrones does. The last episode is kind of an epilogue. So now, because of the way this kind of season is constructed, it's very different from the traditional style narrative that we've seen in the the preceding seasons. It has put a lot of people off, and a lot of people don't like this season because of that. There are some issues that I do have with it. For example, the first 5 episodes, because you are watching dramatic recreations, you feel, well, these survived, the people are talking, so we know that they survived, so it kind of takes any wind out the sails a little bit. And it kind of has this thing where, very much like real kind of like crime shows or whatever, you have the little preview at the beginning showing you the kind of like the highlights of what's happening. And the problem with that, of course, is then you're waiting for those things to happen. You know what's going to happen. So again, it kind of deflates any sort of tension that's throughout the season, throughout that kind of first half of the season. Now, the second half, I would say, plays a lot more like a straight horror film. So if you are a horror fan, you like the kind of like haunted house stories, and also found footage films. A lot of this second half of the season is in the style of found footage. It feels a lot darker, it feels a lot more violent and kind of realistic compared to the first half. Because you are watching the dramatic recreations, like I said, it really doesn't feel particularly scary, I would say. But the second half does. It has that more of a visceral feel to it. So I really enjoyed the second half of the season. But I didn't mind the first half, to be fair. But there's a lot of hate online for this season because of that. Now, in an instance of transparency, I haven't actually seen all of the previous seasons of American Horror Story. I've seen the first 3. The first season I actually didn't like. The second 2 I did like, but I've not seen the hotel or the carnival one. But overall, I actually really enjoyed this film. I feel it's more of a straight horror series this season compared to the first 3, maybe, which were a bit more David Lynch sort of style to a degree. This one feels like more of a straight horror film. If you're a horror fan, you're going to like this season, I would say. But overall, I really enjoyed this. There's some problems I have with the setup of the first half of the season, but I thought the actual, certainly the way the killing spirits were portrayed in the second half were a lot scary, compared to the first half. But I really enjoyed it overall. 7 out of 10 for me. Have you seen it? What do you think of it? Leave me a comment, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.